If you're thinking of creating content in multiple languages for your podcast or your YouTube channel, stick around because I want to share my experience when I decided to create the Focus and Bloom podcast in Español. Stick around. Hola everybody, I'm Yesenia Bocanegra from Focus and Bloom, and here I share a variety of tips and tactics to help you up-level your content creation game. So if you like content like this, where I talk about podcasting and video and all that fun stuff on just building your online brand, be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel and my podcast so that you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes or videos, tutorials. Y si hablas español, visita mi canal de YouTube, Focus and Bloom en español, y el podcast, Focus and Bloom Podcast en español. All right, so let me walk you through really quickly what my thought process was. I was creating content in Spanish many years ago in 2015 when I started the YouTube channel, and I had good and not so good results, but I also did not have a strategy. Fast forward to now, earlier this year, I had a coaching session where my coach told me that I needed to level up or leverage the fact that I spoke multiple languages, and also the fact that I've been hired many times because I speak various languages, in addition to any other technical skill, photography, video, or anything like that. So as I was thinking about it, I decided to then create the Focus and Bloom podcast in Spanish, a second version of it. And I first decided it was going to be just simple audio only and just mix it all together with all my content, and that's it. But as I continued to plan it, I realized that if I was going to commit to this, I was going to do it right. So I decided to create a separate channel for the podcast and have that separate, but continue to have bilingual content on my Instagram account, which is where I hang out most of the time. So if you haven't seen me yet, just go ahead and follow me, Focus and Bloom Studios. I started creating bilingual content in my Instagram account, but then decided to create the podcast in Spanish. As I was planning this, I then decided that I needed to do it in video because of the power of video. I already was deciding on having a blog post on my website for each and one of those episodes. So that means that I now have fresh new weekly content added to my website in Spanish, and that you can then research on Google. Google is the largest search engine. So why not pair it up with YouTube, a video on YouTube, which is the second largest search engine. So bam, I decided to create a video podcast in Spanish because I don't like to complicate myself at all. All right. So now that I've done that, the last thing that I decided was to create a YouTube channel in Spanish. And here is why. I didn't actually decide this until the very last day, the night before the launch. I decided I was going to separate my Spanish content in my YouTube channel from the English one and have it all separate into a separate account. And here's my thought process. So as I was looking at different YouTube videos to see what other people are doing when they're thinking about creating content in multiple languages, here are a couple of guiding questions that sort of like to sum it all up that hopefully will help you in navigating this question of whether or not do you want to create content in multiple languages. So the first one is, if you are assuming you are already creating content and maybe this content is in English, then think about what audience you want to address, want to speak to. If you haven't created anything yet, you want to think about then how comfortable you feel speaking English. Let's say English is one of the languages or the language that a lot of creators are creating content in. And that is completely understandable because it reaches a broader audience. However, if you haven't started and you feel that English may not be your strongest, then you probably want to continue or consider creating content in your native language and then add English later on if that's the case that you want to do. But if you've already started and you started creating content in English and you're considering adding content in your native language, I might just say Spanish because that's what I'm doing. If that's the case, then that's another reason to consider creating content in that particular language. Now, the other thing is you want to think of realistically, what is your available time to create content in both languages? It is very time consuming to create content altogether. Just double that up for a second language. So be realistic with your timing in that sense. Here's an approach. If once you decided that you want to create content in a different language, you can do the following. You can either mix the content and make it bilingual, which I've done and I'm continuing to do at the moment of this recording, specifically in my Instagram account where I have a reel, let's say, that is in English and I would have a caption in Spanish or vice versa. If the reel is in Spanish, I will have captions in English. The other one would be to have a completely separate account, all English, all Spanish, or whatever other language you want to enter here. And the other thing is you can then mix it all together, but then translate it. I've done this too in the past in my YouTube channel where I would have it in video in English and translate it. I would dub it myself and translate that into Spanish. It has some views, but not the best. So it's still an option for you to consider when it comes to creating content in multiple languages, and if that's one thing that you want to do. In the end, what really made me decide to create a separate feed for my podcast and a separate channel in YouTube for Spanish is thinking about SEO and performance and analytics. I want to make sure that my podcast is getting the majority amount of downloads within the community that I want to address or speak to. And the same applies to YouTube. So if I now mix English and Spanish content in my YouTube channel, that means that now I'm addressing half of the audience. So half of the audience who doesn't speak Spanish is not going to watch those videos. Maybe they click on it thinking of something and then they end up clicking away from it. So that's going to end up hurting my analytics, and vice versa. If they are just coming there to get Spanish content and they come across English content and they don't feel comfortable learning in English, then they're not going to watch that. So my overall channel watch time is going to drop or be affected. So overall, you want your content to work for you, not the other way around. And that is why I decided to continue having bilingual content in my Instagram feed, which is the main platform that I use to communicate everything, and then have a separate feed for Spanish for my podcast and a separate channel on YouTube for my Spanish content. So I know that this is a lot of details and there's a lot of research that you may want to do. I highly encourage you to really think about it. But if it's something that you want to commit to it, then go for it. More power to you. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I highly encourage you to check out the Focus and Bloom podcast and the Focus and Bloom podcast in Español, Si Hablas Español, where I share more about content creation, podcast, video, all that fun stuff. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. All in all, just subscribe, follow me. I love teaching and I love sharing and helping you create and elevate your content creation process and experience so that you can just have fun with it. All right, see you on the next one.